Penguin Random House Audio presents The Washington Decree by Jussi Adler-Olsen. Translated by Steve Shine. Read for you by Jason Culp. The legislative developments in the Washington Decree are based on already existing presidential decrees as well as existing federal agencies and institutions whose purpose, among other things, is to assure the implementation of these decrees in critical situations. The list of decrees and institutions can be found at the end of the program. All over the world, particularly in the newer nations, young men are coming to power. Men who are not bound by the traditions of the past, men who are not blinded by the old fears and hates and rivalries, young men who can cast off the old slogans and delusions and suspicions. John F. Kennedy, speech upon being nominated as candidate for president at the Democratic National Convention in Los Angeles, July 15, 1960. Let work in public administration be a proud and interesting career, and let every man and woman who works in any area of our national government, in any branch, at any level, be able to say with pride and with honor in future years, I served the United States government in that hour of our nation's need. John F. Kennedy, State of the Union Speech to Congress, January 29, 1961. Forward. If there's one thing about world history that is certain, it's that nothing is certain. Nothing is eternal, and nothing's imperishable. Today's hero is tomorrow's bad guy. Mighty empires come and go. Everything is a series of epochs. The Phoenician Empire, the Roman Empire, the Pharaoh's Egypt, the French Empire, the Ottoman and Byzantine empires, the Grecian cradle of democracy, all world powers that disappeared. Sometimes it takes hundreds of years, other times it's from one day to the next. Who could have imagined that a single shot in Sarajevo would provoke a world war that resulted in millions of deaths? That Adolf Hitler could get away with murdering the entire leadership of his SA Corps in a single night? That a superpower like the Soviet Union and the entire Eastern Bloc could collapse so quickly? Who would have thought that a single event on the 11th of September 2001 could totally change the world's stability? And who, with knowledge of the 100 Years' War, the Inquisition, and the Crusades, could have been able to predict that the main cause of war and unrest in the 21st century, fed by a widening gap between the world's rich and poor, would once again be religion, Christianity versus Islam, where 12 drawings of the Prophet Muhammad, published in a tiny Western country with 5 million inhabitants, could unite the entire Muslim world in its rage. In 1975, Pol Pot's Khmer Rouge emptied all of Cambodia's cities from one week to the next, and an unprecedented reign of terror became reality. Since then, similar radical upheavals have taken place all over the world. In Indonesia, Khomeini's Iran, Milosevic and Karadic's Yugoslavia, Rwanda, and Idi Amin's Uganda. People have been persecuted, deported, and purged. Laws and the judicial system have been disregarded. At the same time, so-called civilized states have attempted to guard themselves against such situations with all the means at a democracy's disposal: legislation, legal principle, rules, and regulations. In Europe, despite the British wish for a Brexit, we seek peace through our cooperation in the European Union, which is why new states, after careful consideration, keep being invited to join. Our politicians say this is the surest way towards stability in our part of the world. The question is whether one forgets that we're creating a superpower in the wake of all these peaceful intentions, a superpower that must eventually challenge other superpowers culturally, economically, and even militarily. It's difficult to see how Russia, China, or a prospective future confederation of Arab or Muslim states would benefit from an expansionist EU policy. George Washington, the first president of the world's current sole superpower, once stated that one can trust a nation no further than its own interests dictate, and that no responsible statesman would deviate from this rule, that national interests are stronger than ideology. In spite of these words, and in spite of the fact that history shows that long-term stability in the world is an illusion, Washington's successors to the presidency have attempted to assure such stability time and again, and today many oppressed people and nations have the United States to thank for a better life, at least in part. But at the same time, in recent years, the United States has undergone a series of constitutional adjustments that the White House itself has called the biggest restructuring of the federal government since 1947. A restructuring of constitutional mechanisms that in the wrong hands and under the wrong conditions could have unpredictable consequences, consequences that could easily result in situations very reminiscent of those that the U.S. military has felt itself obliged to rectify around the world in the past. With the creation of the Department of Homeland Security, DHS, President George W. Bush saw to it that all security agencies in the United States were brought together and coordinated under one administration. The crucial difference between this setup and similar security systems in Stalin's Soviet Union and Hitler's Third Reich lies in how the DHS is intended to be used in regard to its country's own citizens. Although the department was created in the wake of 9/11 to secure the United States against terrorists from abroad, it can also handily be used to monitor and control its own people. In the Washington Decree, unfortunate circumstances caused the President of the United States to lose his good judgment, and despite his best intentions, unwittingly set a chain of events in motion that rapidly lead to a situation where the DHS, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, and the military are vulnerable to misuse, and all constitutional guarantees are revoked. We've seen this kind of situation arise before, and it will arise again. And it can happen suddenly, before you know it. Jussi Adler-Olsen, 2007. Chapter 1. Autumn, 1992. Even though she was still only 14 years old, Doggie knew, just as every adventure has a beginning, it also has an ending. In Doggie's case, the ending couldn't have been worse. It all began with Governor Jansen's office sending Virginia's biggest local television station a suggestion for a new quiz show, plus the capital to get it off the ground. It was to be a geographical quiz where everyone who could correctly name China's most populous city was invited to participate. The TV station went for the idea. After the initial elimination round, only 48 participants were left, and among them, quite sensationally, was a 14-year-old girl. The excitement rose for 4 weeks. Both the sponsor, Leatherman Auto Tires, and Governor Jansen's campaign office wanted to get their money's worth. The first programs were broadcast in the afternoon, but the show quickly found its way into prime time. A good 3/4 of Virginians followed the event on their TV screens. This was a new viewer record. Throughout the Commonwealth of Virginia, people bet on the outcome. Each had his or her favorite, but most, by far, backed the girl with the dimples, who was also the youngest contestant, Dorothy Curtis, also known as Doggie. 3 weeks and 3 episodes later, Virginia's TV audience finally got their 3 winners, and what winners they were. Governor Jansen beamed like a Hollywood star, the host had his wages doubled, and the newspapers went crazy. With the exception of a blonde with silicone breasts and...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?